Welcome, everyone, to this week's MusicWise. I'm Donato Cabrera, music director of the Las Vegas Philharmonic and the California Symphony. And I have to say, I'm so excited to have our guest with us this week. Uh, it's one of those things where I knew him and what he did before we met and knew each other, as is so often the case with great restaurants and institutions like the Las Vegas Philharmonic. It's not always possible to meet the people behind what's happening on stage or what's happening in the kitchen. As I've stated before, when I had Gio Mauro and James Trees on MusicWise, I truly believe there is such a strong connection between food, between a kitchen and an orchestra, between a chef and a conductor. The idea of a team creating something that is nourishment, whether it's to the body or to the mind. There are similarities that go beyond just the technique that's required to create both. So help me welcome Chef Brian Howard from Sparrow and Wolf. Hey, Brian.
Hey, how are you? So good to see you.
So good to see you
Thank you
too.
for having me today. I really appreciate it. It's an honor to be here.
As I was just mentioning, the idea that something like an orchestra or a band or a group of people producing something together that is nourishment is so many connections between a restaurant, between a kitchen, between what I do and what you do. Is this something that when you got into food, was this something that was appealing to you, or was this something that you discovered along the way?
Well, I think it's something that I discovered along the way. My upbringing, I tell this story. I wasn't brought up in a food household, although, I had very limited resources to fresh ingredients. Everything kind of came out of a can or one way or another. But when I did have, whether it was PBS watching Ming Tsai or Julia Childs or any of these guys, I realized there was so much a broader spectrum to what food is and the people that it was bringing together. And then as my career went on, I realized that like you said, the nourishment, right? Nourishment of food is the only thing that really can bring people together at any given moment. I'm not sure if you've ever seen the documentary A Seat at the Table. But it's one of the, you kind of hit on that. Like food's that special thing that no matter what culture we are, no matter, what's going on in music as well, right? So, and like you said, that whether it's the conductor of the orchestra or the chef in the kitchen or the person that's running the pass, right? If one of those little details are out of sync, or your employees aren't engaged in the right way, then it could be a catastrophe for the song that's going to come out of it, right? But when they really are on, it's like watching a fantastic ballet or, to watch cooks dance or sing together, right?
I remember when I was talking with James and Gio, they both mentioned that the restaurant, the experience one has when walking into the restaurant from the very beginning throughout the entire meal is something that you and James and Gio think about. It's not just the food. It's not just the preparation of the food. It's what they see when they first sit down at the table. It's how they're greeted at the door. It's how they're engaged.
It's every detail, and the most impactful ones are the ones that think about what happens when a person walks in the door, what happens when they leave, right? Do they have the opportunity to stop by the kitchen on the way out and the whole team say thank you? Or, those things are so impactful to our guests. And like you said, that make up that whole experience. So, yeah.
So while I think, certainly in my case, music, my parents liked music like most people do. They had, Billy Joel albums and the Eagles, Hotel California. I mean, that sort of background. And they certainly supported what I was doing while not really necessarily understanding it. You grew up, you mentioned you didn't grow up in a foodie culture, but I'm curious, what were those first moments that say, gosh, I want to explore this further? What was it about getting into food? What was the initial interest?
So the moments that were the biggest part and played the biggest role, and the reason why I do this every day, and I tell everybody it's about throwing a dinner party every day. And we come to work if we can make that one guest, make them feel like they're the only people in the room, and that they're just guests at your table in your home, this will be a successful place. It's not, if food is a secondary to it, I'm last to it. It's really about the people that make up that experience. Now, for me, it was my grandmother's, right? So my grandmother hosted the holidays. My family, it wasn't every Sunday we sit down for dinner or anything like that. It was like come home when the street lights are on, and there's going to be what's there, or if you are here for dinner, you eat dinner. But the holidays were so special for me because it was that moment where people came together around a table. And we talk about music. For me, it was the big grand record player in the cabinet that played Roy Orbison or Elvis or Johnny Cash, and that was kind of what was going on. And I liked the idea of entertaining, right? My grandmother was an entertainer. She was bringing people together around the table, but also cooking food that I never seen. Whether it was a turkey or fresh cranberry sauce or a tomato sauce or stuffing with the gizzards in it, whatever it may be, my grandma would make scrapple. So like these kinds of things. Those were my introduction to real cooking, right? And I that always stuck with me. And I had made a goal as a young cook that by 30 I would own my own restaurant. And I just kind of put my head down and I kept cooking, whether it was in short order restaurants where I started, whether from fast food to the Greek diner to working my way up to short order stuff, and then finally into more finer things. I had always had the same goal, and it was to never look back, and eventually I would own my own place. And I had mentors along the way that were like, treat it like it's yours, and it will be. When I first set out, and it became a reality right around 31, so it wasn't too far off, but when I started actually planning the phases for it, I was trying to figure out why. The why. Why do you want to do this, right? You've always just said you're going to do it, and it's been a goal, but you've never really mapped out the why. I'm a good cook. I can create good things outside of those things, but I kind of came back full circle, and I kept touching on those dinner parties that my grandma would throw. And so for me, it was like hospitality. Why? One, I was going to leave Las Vegas at one point. I'd been here for almost 18 years, and I was kind of over what was happening in the food scene on the Strip, and I felt like we're all using the same ingredients, just in a different way. And I had to break my rules to kind of, do stuff on my menus with my bosses that were there that didn't look like what was happening down the road. So I was kind of over it, and I was like, I'm going to go to a food city, like somewhere else where there's cooler things happening in the industry. But at the same time, I realized that Las Vegas had been so good to me over the years that I wanted to see the continuous growth of this city. And I knew that if I set out to do something, it would be a way that we can make impact on our community. And to me, I think that was more important at that point. So, we set out to do so. But in answering that question was like, can we throw a dinner party every night that is just about hospitality and really getting back to genuine hospitality? Because I felt like we lost sight of it on the Strip. I felt like, there was no engagement with my guests. I don't know their name. Maybe I'll see them next year when they come back if I'm lucky. But I know if I could do something in the community, I would know what that person likes to eat. I would know what they like to drink, and maybe we'll see them a couple times a week. So that's kind of why we set out to create what we did.
I think that's a really interesting point that most people who only visit Las Vegas don't really necessarily ever experience. Like I grew up in Las Vegas, but and I have to also say we have a similar connection. My grandmothers were the reason I got into music, and it was
Okay.
for the same reason. I'm half Mexican, and my Mexican grandmother, all of her sisters, my great aunts, when we would go down to Los Angeles for the holidays, they'd make these incredible Mexican meals. One specialty, one great aunt did chile rellenos, and another one did tamal elote, and my grandmother made incredible meat that was used for tacos and burritos, et cetera, and they'd all come together. And then after these dinners, my grandmother, who did not learn music to play professionally, she just learned from her father by ear, she would sit down at the piano and play these old Mexican waltzes and marches, and maybe her favorite song like Laura's theme or from Dr.
Sure.
Chicago. And everyone would sort of filter from the dining room table over to the living room and surround her. And I thought to myself, I want to create this love. I want to share. I want to be able to share my passion, whatever it is, like she's doing at that piano right
Sure.
now.
Yeah.
And for you, of course, it was food, and for me, it's music. But I think that it also, these family experiences that we have, that we share, are common, and it is something that when you visit Las Vegas and you worked on the Strip, and I will say, listen, there's nothing wrong with that sort of. You learn so much. I'm only guessing. I never have, but you learn so much when you work in those great restaurants on the Strip.
The best, and I I travel a lot, and it's funny now that I can touch back on the subject, but traveling elsewhere, you realize how well trained the staff in Las Vegas is, and it's just unparalleled to anywhere else in the country because of the level of expectations there are within the hotels. And it doesn't matter if you're, the banquet cook or the vice president. The training that goes involved is some of the best that there is, right? So we have this access to amazing talent here in town. There's so much talent in this town. So yeah, I don't disagree with you there.
But I think what is so wonderful, of course, is that if someone comes to Las Vegas or moves to Las Vegas, they then experience, and I'm talking specifically about the food culture, it is almost the opposite of what they experience at the Strip. It's this very family-oriented experience. Sure. Where you walk into Sparrow and Wolf, you walk into Monzu, you walk into Esther's, and of course, a lot of it has to do with the aesthetic and the goals of our friends.
I got to see Gio sing the other night in Monzu, and it was a little bit later in the evening. I didn't even know it. We were sitting at the table having a glass of wine, and he goes, "Excuse me, I'm going to go sing." And I was for a moment, I was like, "Oh, that's probably a bad idea," because I didn't know his background with that, and I'm like, "Chef's going to get up there and sing." And when he opened his mouth, I was just floored. I was like, it was incredible, right? So, if you haven't been there to see that, you have to.
You have to, absolutely. So, but it is this goal that that I wish everyone that has not been to Las Vegas could experience. That when they walk into Sparrow and Wolf, it's really like you're walking into a family living room.
Everyone's here, and that's that. With that being said, like our staff has been here. Most of our staff in the front has been here since day one. We don't see a lot of turnover because we make them feel like family. They are a part of our family. I mean, this is everything I have and my family has. So the people that are great and come in and respect what we do, we give back to them just as if they were. And most of them work with us forever. So it's like, we spend so much time together, this becomes part of family, and that only translates to the guest. And it's, when we talk about hospitality, our training is mostly based on hospitality. Mm-hmm. Again, it really is. It's, you could go and you're going to watch in that. The reason I sent you that video today is because it really, I find myself watching that video once or twice a year since I've first seen it. And I realized when I saw that video that it really connected well with me and the way that we do things here, but it also helped me really justify that I was doing the right things, right? And having that right recipe, and making sure that you're more of a people person than you are a restaurateur, and never forgetting that it's the people that make up the business every day, right? And it's not me, right? They most people think the guy standing at the pass is the most important person in the room, and they come and they want to, shake your hand and take a picture with you. And I tell them every time, I'm like, thank you, but it's these guys right here that are doing the hard work, right? They just make me look good at the end of the day. I have a special vision for certain things, and they're able to help me recreate that. Well,
it's the same. It's the same philosophy that I have. I'm the only person on stage that's not as a conductor. I am actually not making music. My hands don't physically touch something, and I'm not putting my lips to an instrument using a bow. I am literally taking a breath, and through a gesture that might mean nothing to anyone, everyone else on stage, I trust that they're going to create the sound.
Sure. Yeah.
And
And that's it, right? And it's your job there to make sure that it's, like you said, well orchestrated, right? And that it goes smoothly. And those guys they're there to engage in you and make sure. Sorry, we've got a little bit of background noise.
that's fine.
Um, and the same for our kitchen. I haven't thought about it. I always think about music in ingredient ways. And obviously we touched on the conductor aspect of a service, and I think those are important. But it's usually when I think about food and music, it's about the right ingredients, right? And making sure that you may have a great drum player, but just a little bit more, bass guitar makes the song that much more special, and vice versa with the way we cook, right?
Mhm.
It's important.
We mentioned this video a couple of times. And I want to get to that because this video, which is a TEDx talk by Gabriel Stulman, is called "A Winning Recipe: Lessons from Restaurants on Engaging Your Team." And what I hadn't seen it until you sent it earlier, and what I was so impressed with was the what we've just been talking about is that how to engage the people around you to be to be engaged, number one,
Sure.
and to take an interest in their job in with passion. And
The restaurant, and I don't know how this is with music, but I would imagine that it's similar in the fact that it can become very routine because obviously we roll out a menu for the season, and then we do it and we practice it every day over and over and over X amount of times a day. So that can become monotonous and tiring for your staff, right? And they get bored. And most kids now, these newer generations, the younger kids, they have all the access within seconds on your phone, right? And they, a lot of them feel that they're beyond the training, and they can just go pull these recipes off. But like for me growing up, it was like you had to spend time, right? It took time, and you mastered that station before you moved on to the next thing. Not a lot of kids don't want to do that now, so you have to find ways. We used to have a no phone policy in our restaurant, right? If you were there, unless it was emergency or things like this. Now, how do we get them to engage and give them the opportunity to use their phone? So if we move to mobile prep lists, or things that are a little bit more fluid and help make impact on how we operate, but allows them to, I guess, have the sense and comfort of their phone, right? Because a lot of people are still looking for that. But I think finding new ways, and Gabriel will touch on it a little bit, to engage with your staff. And we try to make everything we do here, it should be education, it should be learning. If you're coming to work and you're not happy, then we're not doing our job, right? It shouldn't. Anybody that we always tell them, like, if this ever feels like a job to you, you shouldn't be here, right? Because we try to provide the tools that come in and you're learning constantly. And if and anybody that knows me, I change my menu quite often, so we're always kind of in touching on a lot of new different things. So it gives them the opportunity. I think I do it partially so I don't get bored, but I also give them the sense to, like, hey, you know what? Like last year or last month we learned about this really cool northern Thailand curry, and next month we're going to learn how to make this something from Morocco, or. So there's that sense of education and always pushing forward, and coming up with new ways to do that. And now it's from a social media aspect, and touching base with who's really good on social media in the restaurant, and finding that one person where they're good. There's always someone that's going to want to sit and play on Facebook all day, but do it right. So, I think it's got to be constant. It's got to be a continuous evolution to keep them, like you said, engaged for the win, but also show them, like he touches on, a lot of leaders will paint this picture of growth, right? But how do you promote that growth, and how do you make it a clear, we talk about a clear path to success, and we can write it down and put an SOP together and have these, procedures in place that you could follow these rules and this could happen. But if you're not really in tune with that employee, or actually showing them physically how to do it, or taking the risk that this person might fail. We promote failure every day. Like you'll hear me every day talk about failing, right? I want you to fail. You made a mistake, great. don't make it again or 3 times. Let's work through it and make new ones, right? And I think you get more out of people, and when they see that they're allowed to make these mistakes, but it also helps them move forward, and it's the same thing you're going to hear in this video. We talk about promoting within, right? I never outsource. I promote young kids, which 6 years ago I probably would have not done so. I would have told you we're going to find a guy that's got some chops and he's got a real good resume. I don't even look at resumes no more. I look at how charismatic you are and how well you are in front of me, and how, if I think you're a good person, there's a chance you're going to have an opportunity here. And we take people. Like most recently, I had met one of our new young cook through a car salesman when I was buying a new car, and he told me I could just sense his passion about his younger brother wanting to cook. I could feel it just talking to this guy and just passing. We're just sitting there having a conversation, and he was a dishwasher. And I told him, I said, tell your brother to come if he wants, come and see what it's like in a real kitchen. And now he's been working with us for 6 months, and he's going to be an all-star one day. So it's providing those opportunities that some people just might not give you.
We're going to start the video. It's sort of in the middle of it, but at the beginning of this video, Gabriel Stolman mentions that, listen, what we do, and music is the same way. If you're a musician or if you work in the restaurant business, you're not doing it to make money. The profit margin in a restaurant business is what he says averages 6%. So you're not there to make money. The hours are long. It's the same thing with learning an instrument, being in an orchestra. The amount of preparation in order to be good on an instrument or to be proficient in the kitchen and is just it is deterring to most people. So
sure, like
you said, it's the people that are going to succeed in business or in food, hospitality. It's because of the passion that they have first and foremost. And one of the other things you mentioned, which is then we'll play the video. There's no way around technique.
Sure. You either got it or you don't. You can't fake it, right? Eventually it'll come out, whether you're not. And in my younger career, like I started in management side around 21 years old, and I don't know what it was that people saw in me at that age, because I was just young and on fire, and I think that was part of it. But I knew nothing, and I just failed constantly, and I tried to fake it until I made it, and in the back end, I'm like reading a book trying to learn what my task was for the week or how to do a food cost, because nobody had ever showed me, and like I'm trying to study on my own. But eventually the truth comes out, and like you said, you either got it or you don't. But at the same time, like there's no instant gratification in this, right? It's a journey, right? And if you are up for the journey, it's rewarding. And I wouldn't trade it, and I tell the young guys, that are like, oh well, I can't live on this money, or I can't do that, and I'm like, I have made really good money, and I've made really terrible money, and I can tell you that, like, I don't do this for that reason, but I do it because I love it. I have a desire to come back every day and a desire to find new things, that there are new skill sets even along the way. I mean, I'm going to be 40 this year, and the skill sets I'm learning now in my career are something, if you had asked me 10 years ago, I would have never told you that would even be in my vocabulary. Mm-hmm. So it is a rewarding thing. In speaking on music, I had an opportunity. I was either going to be a DJ or a chef when I was younger, and I had DJ'd kind of some local rave parties and stuff growing up, and at the age of, I think, 20, when I first met my wife, she told me, she goes, "You're a better chef than you are a DJ, so you should probably stick to this." And I'm glad that she did, because it's worked out. But that was my into music.
Now, if you do make it as a DJ, there's real money in that.
I know. I debate that sometimes too, right?
All right, let's watch this fantastic TEDx talk by Gabriel Stolman.
There's other ways to share the spotlight, though, and that's internal promotion. You see, a lot of companies talk about career development and clear paths for growth, but all too often, I think those are hollow words, where people say that that's what they care about, but their actions don't always follow that. That's not good enough anymore. We need to do better. We need to make sure that we are promoting from within, and we need to also amplify the stories of that promotion. A few weeks ago, the general manager of one of our restaurants put in notice because she's moving out of New York, sadly, to move to Austin, Texas. This left us with a hole at the top level service management position at one of our restaurants. The person that was directly under her, ready to take the position, or was not ready to take the position just yet. They were doing a great job, but they weren't ready to be the general manager just yet. So we were faced with a dilemma. What do? Do we look for somebody that's very qualified externally, or do we find a more creative internal solution to this problem? In our company, we constantly promote and we constantly talk about this idea of internal promotion. So it's important that if we're going to always talk about it, we got to put our actions where those words are. So what we've chosen to do is actually find a creative solution. Instead, what we're going to do is we are promoting the general manager of the other restaurant across the street, a guy who's been in his position for 3 years, crushing it every day. He's been doing such a good job at one restaurant, we're going to give him the opportunity to try to do it at 2 restaurants. Then what we're going to do after that is we're going to take the 2 service managers at each of these restaurants, and we're going to promote each of them to be the assistant general manager. Then what we're going to do is we're going to identify a waiter or a bartender or a maitre d' who has leadership potential, and we are going to offer them their first management position, and they will become the new service manager. And then what we will do is hire a new waiter or bartender from the outside. You see, when we promote from within, what we have the ability to do is improve our retention. We have the ability to promote and enrich our culture, and we have the ability to do better training. Because in our case, everybody who's moving into a new position is being trained by the person who last held it. And that person's sticking around as a source of information constantly and continuously. What this means is that sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes, I think it's important that as companies, we make the decision to promote a less qualified internal candidate over a more qualified external candidate. Because when we do that, we have the ability to make ourselves a more attractive employer internally and externally, in addition to improving retention, improving culture, and improving training. Because what's going to happen when that new waiter or bartender comes into our company is they're going to be surrounded by every layer of management above them was once a waiter or bartender, and they see in their faces an amplified story of, if I work here, I have the opportunity to grow too. Externally, it brings more talent to us. It's brilliant. People that are coming into our restaurants that work at other restaurants see the general manager today, and they know, I used to come to this restaurant 3 years ago. You used to make my cocktails. Today you're the general manager. I want to work in this company. I want to be a part of this. There's opportunities for growth. And the more we do this, over time, we begin to surround ourselves with an entire team that represents our investment in them. Currently, the unemployment rate in this country is 6%. A lot of people are up in arms about that. Doesn't bother me as much as a different statistic. What bothers me is that 7 out of 10 people that have jobs in this country are disengaged. That they're simply going to work and they're clocking in and they're clocking out. Or worse yet, some of them are actively undermining the ambitions of the people who do care in that company. That's the real problem in my mind. Lack of engagement is a real issue, and it's something that we really need to work on. And it's got to start with CEOs, founders, leaders, and managers. And those same Gallup and McKinsey reports about employee engagement suggest that many people are trying. But you know what else it suggests? More people are not trying. And of the few managers and CEOs that are trying, they're only finding success a third of the time. That's inadequate. We need to make change. And the ways that I found to make change, and the ways that I encourage you to make change, are to celebrate individuality. Help the people that you work with live their values and their passions and dreams through the company, inside their work life and outside. Second, create collaboration. Be intentional about it, even if it's not the most efficient way, and even if it means creating more work and more time. Create collaboration and share in the recognition when you do. And lastly, and most importantly, we must make as a default way of thinking internal promotion. It's got to be that way. It's how we're going to build better cultures and better teams. Because if we don't do these things, we're going to continue to tread water, and we're going to continue to stifle production, innovation, and job creation. So think about all that we have been able to achieve as a country with only 3 out of 10 people engaged at work. Imagine what we could create if 5 out of 10 people were engaged at work. Let's start making a dent in employee engagement. Thank you.
I love everything he says, and I encourage everyone to. We'll put a link up so you can watch the entire talk, which is about 18 minutes, and we played the last 6 of it. But and you've already touched upon this, that you are, first of all, you were encouraged that you were already implementing some of the things he talked about. But in terms of how it applies to Sparrow and Wolf today, this idea of keeping of internal promotion and engaging. He talks a little bit about how, for instance, he encourages the bartending staff to create their own cocktails or to put it, offer something that hasn't come on the menu. Talk us a little bit through about how you have implemented these strategies at Sparrow and Wolf.
Sure, absolutely. I think, well, one, collaboration, like you said, is a huge key to what we do, and that involves every menu making, whether it's front and back of the house. Our process looks a little similar, where it's like, okay, we have a list of ingredients that are coming out or going to be available. We pass that out to our team. We give them the opportunity to create 3 dishes and submit them, right? They have to read like a menu. They have to be, you can't just say, hey, chef, I want to do this dish, right? And I was thinking this. I want you to actually write it down. It should read how it would read to a guest as if I was the guest sitting at the table. Not only that, like once we see that, we know that it reads well, it's probably going to taste well. In my head, at least it's kind of how I operate. If it doesn't read well, we know we've got some work to do and some tweaks, and you can kind of see where that person is on the spectrum of creativity or maturity within the task at hand. Once we establish everybody's turned in their stuff or how engaged they are, we create a creative meeting where we all sit down together and we go over all of those ingredients, all of the dishes that they've put together. 9 out of 10 dishes won't ever make the menu, right? The process is not meant for that. The process is meant to spark maybe fire within a round table where we can say, oh, well, 2 out of those 3 things that you put on that paper sound really intriguing, right? And this guy had a great idea. Maybe those work together, right? Or maybe it sparks something within me to be able to take something and hone that into a dish. The bar process as well. They are allowed to come and sit in. They get the same list of ingredients that our kitchen does, because our bar team has to work a little bit backwards at Sparrow and Wolf, where they're a kitchen-focused bar. They get to work with, we cut down on a lot of waste. We really focus on eliminating waste in our restaurant. We don't talk about it a lot, but it's something that we do. And it's how do we cut back? I always used to come into work when I worked in other restaurants, and I would see how much waste the bar would have left over from their garnishes or things like that. And we were throwing citrus away all the time because it was either going bad or we ordered too much or what have you, or juice, they got too juice. So we tried to figure out ways that we could take and eliminate those variables at the bar by implementing ingredients that we were using in the kitchen. So if we had beets on a dish, you'd see beets at the bar. If Or is there a new way to use that trim from the citrus peels? Can we salt and ferment them and turn them into a fish garnish, or something like that, right? So collaboration, number one, by getting everybody to engage with it when it's time to write the menu, we allow the bar to kind of have a good free will in creation. We do have a manager that oversees that kind of stuff. And we have kind of a guideline of like what we're looking for. These are the spirits we want to use in the fall. These are some of the flavor profiles we want to use in the fall. You're allowed to have, for the lack of better words, two, I won't cuss on your show, but two MFers, right? And we allow that in the kitchen, where you have to have two things that are they're a pain in the ass to make or plate or whatever from a work standpoint, but are really special when they get to the table. But you have to find the balance of the rest of the menu to make sure that you don't have too many of those kinds of dishes, right? And the same thing. So once all that comes together, it's a fun process. Then we go to a stage two of finalizing those things that have come together, and then from then on it's tasting and stuff like that. But they're part of the process the whole way, as much as they want to be. Some people aren't as engaged, like we talked, but some people, those that are, you really get a sense of who they are, and then you can see who your next leader is going to be. Our sous chef right now in our kitchen, and he's almost like a number one in here. I mean, he pretty much runs it when I'm not here, the two of them. He was fresh out of culinary school, and it kind of goes back to my point. If you would ask me 10 years ago, if I would have hired these young kids or promoted early, we always try to look at how does a dishwasher become a prep cook, right? Mm-hmm. And how does a prep cook become a line cook? And to ensure that there's a clear sense of that path for the employee themselves. But when it comes to management, you're taking a bigger risk because you're now allowing them to play with your financial end, right? And one guy and I'm guilty of it. I was let go of a country club because every Friday was like Christmas for me. I was ordering the whole stock of artichoke, instead of just getting the artichoke, just so I could show my staff how it looked and how it was grown. So we're paying all these enormous charges in shipping. And, eventually I was terminated from my role because I wasn't managing the funds properly. But you're allowing them to make really serious mistakes if you're not paying attention. The cost of goods is through the roof and labor's through the roof. And, so being able to take younger students and going back to my sous chef, he started here. We took him right out of culinary school. He was 19 years old. I think he's 22 now. And he was the guy that we didn't think would make it. It was just weren't sure if he was cut out for the kitchen. And now he's my number two, right? And it was just, I could tell that he wanted it. You gave him a task, he got it done well, but he also provided alternative methods, right? And alternative thought processes. We like them to be able to think, right? I don't want robots. I don't want people to just come here and do what we do. I like to be challenged every now and then and be like, hey, chef, I think this could be better. Hey, man, I got 50 things on my station, and I know you're excited about the menu, but I'm dying over here, So it's important that everybody has a voice. And I find that once you see that an employee has voice, because as a cook, you're trained to come in and put your head down and work and do the job that the chef tells you to do. And that gets old, right? And eventually you become, you feel like you're silenced by the system, or, but really you're not opening your eyes up and listening to what has to be done. If you just find your voice in the kitchen and you're able to look at the guy next to you and be like, hey, that's not how we do it, right? Or maybe, the chef likes this as a standard, and, maybe try going about it doing this way. Once you see that person has a voice, you can take that person and build them because they're not afraid, right? And with this young man in particular, we found that he not only had a voice and a mature one at his age, he's definitely got an old soul in him somewhere, but he had a palate as well, right? And no matter what he did, and he makes mistakes every day, right? And it's okay because he's constantly learning from them. Our one of our managers was promoted within. She was a bartender and went through the process, and we went through training and service and all these things. But it was one of our best moves, and we had originally brought someone in from the outside, and we learned. We have all the tools right here, right? And it's just focusing and not being blinded by someone's resume or status of where they've worked before, and you think they're going to come in and do all these fantastic things when if you've got the keys in front of you, you can play those tunes, and they'll play them how you teach them because they're here already, and they've already had that structure, right? So that's collaboration is one of the things, and promotion within. We always, even if we've got other projects going on right now currently, like I'm always interested to hear people's feedback on, or even just, one of the things when we do our reviewing, and I've got an interesting process when we talk about staff reviews, right? We don't do this 90-day, 120, once a year review. I do spot reviews. I'm constantly reviewing, where it's like, if chances are, if I'm standing next to you and I'm showing you something or telling you something, we're working on something that needs to be either addressed or you could do better, or or you're doing a great job and I'm telling you about it. But I feel like you get more, right? You never know the longevity of a team member no more, right? You don't know in 12 months that they're going to be here for that review, or in 2 years they're going to be ready for that promotion. But if you go along the process and you're like, hey, you know what? Maybe I gave this guy a raise 90 days ago, but today he really deserves a little bump, right? So we bump him up, right? And it's little spot reviews, and we're not, like, you're not getting this massive, major review like you normally would, or a normal pay raise like you would in a yearly review. But by the end of the year, you've made that, and it's more often, right? Which becomes more, I feel like, motivating for someone when they're constantly being, you do a good job, right? And you can reward somebody for their hard work versus waiting and letting me sit down. And most of the time, you're sitting down in a review is an awkward thing, right? Because you're sitting there telling somebody most of the time where they've done wrong, right? And how you can be better at it, versus an everyday thing where it's just constantly, this is just part of what we do, right? I feel like you get more with that.
Absolutely.
So, I think the staffing part is one of the big things. It's one of the most important things in what we do, right? And hiring the right people, right, is a key. And I forget who had told me this, but somebody had said to me, hire slow and fire fast, right? And it's so true, right? And you can adapt that, right? And making sure that you always go through a honeymoon phase with an employee,
Sure.
where
want them to succeed. You want anyone you hire to succeed.
Sure. And most people sit down and they're going to give you the best painting of who they are. And then sometimes that is what it is. And sometimes in a couple months, it's not necessarily what it is. Right. And so it's being able to get through that and finding out how we can adapt those skills and be better.
I think there are two things that come to mind. Surprisingly, one of the least satisfying jobs in terms of surveys and polls is being in an orchestra. And
I think the kitchen's probably going to be right up there with you now with this generation too.
Exactly. And the reason why is exactly what you mentioned. A violinist who sits in the back of the second violins, they could literally sit there for 35 years. They're told how to play something, how fast to play it, how soft to play it, how loud to play it, and they have no engagement, any artistic decision. They don't even have a choice of what to play. They're basically told to do everything, and sure. and that can lead to a life of unhappiness. That's not surprising. And I think one of the many things that the orchestral world is coming to the realization now during this time where we can't do what we do, we can't perform at the moment. This idea of keeping musicians engaged and finding ways to have them be part of the process has been really wonderful, actually, for everyone concerned, because we're now at a point where we can't get together. Our 65 musicians can't get together and play. It's impossible. But we can send out small ensembles to a park or to,
sure.
And begin to play live music and really giving them the agency to decide what they play and when do they rehearse and where they're going to perform and what they're, that is certainly an added.
Do you think, with everything, sorry to cut you off, but do you feel like obviously that's a benefit of this whole pandemic we're coming through, of learning to kind of reset and touch on things that may need to change in your industry?
Absolutely, and that's one of many things. The other thing that we've come to the realization is that we really didn't use technology. In many ways, going to a symphony concert is very similar to a museum in that we're celebrating music of the past. But there's music being written today, and there are ways to see and hear music that goes well beyond just the concert hall. And so I think that we can learn a lot from what you've done at Sparrow and Wolf with engaging your employees and promoting from within. And the other one, just sort of comically, I have some close friends here in San Francisco in the bar and restaurant scene, and one of them owns a tiki bar. And talk about an entire menu of MFers. I mean,
Sure.
every single thing they have on the menu is like a 1/4 ounce of passion fruit syrup and an eighth of an ounce of pineapple. I mean, there's no way around of creating a quick drink at a bar, and that.
Well, especially nowadays, right? Nowadays, especially more and more, you're seeing a lot more fresh ingredients involved in cocktails. It's yeah.
Talk us through what you hope someone who's never been to Sparrow and Wolf, what do you want them to experience when they walk into the door for the first time?
Well, I feel like we touched on again earlier, it's feel as if you were coming into my home. There should be a warmth, and an excitement, and you're going to look at the menu and you're probably going to not know what to order. A lot of people, they don't understand. Sometimes they're not sure about ingredients, but our team, is there to help. But at the same time, what we do is I think fairly about taking things that people are comfortable with, or that they've had before, and then just turning the dial slightly and introducing it to maybe a little bit of a new way, or a new ingredient, or a new culture, right? I like to take inspiration. My food is inspired food. I cook the way, at least for Sparrow and Wolf, I cook how I feel, and we get inspired. We task the team, and we'll give them a dining budget. They all have a dining budget to go out and go eat in the neighborhood, right? Sparrow and Wolf was meant to be a restaurant inspired by my surroundings, inspired by Chinatown, and specifically in this manner. But if we were to take Sparrow and Wolf and put it in, a different neighborhood, we would, kind of evolve to what was our surroundings there, right? And what's at the local market there. We're fortunate to be in the middle of Chinatown here, where we have access to so many amazing restaurants and so many cool ingredients. And, we'll tell the staff, like, hey, go out to eat this week, hit up 3 restaurants and pick the coolest things that you've seen, and then come back, and then we're going to talk about them and make them Sparrow and Wolf, do it in a Sparrow and Wolf manner. So for instance, our porterhouse, right? It's a 32-ounce large format porterhouse. It gets dry aged, and it's rubbed in miso and aged and grilled over a wood fire. It's the American barbecue, outdoor grilling, but we do it in the style of like Korean banchan, right? Where you get all these little tiny plates around it, and they're not traditional by any means. They're what we feel should be on that plate that day, and what our cooks come up with. This is one of the areas where our cooks have the ability to create a daily item on the menu. And a lot of the time we're using, trim for something, or turn it into something new. But it's that being inspired by that Korean barbecue, but then taking it and making it your own in a fun way, and introducing that to guests that may have never even been to a Korean barbecue restaurant or seen it. So you're kind of creating a layer of education along the way. I think, if we can make people feel, that they've just, like I said, they're the only people in the room. John Anthony, one of my general manager and partner, I believe you know him. We've worked together for 12 years, maybe 12, 13 years. Wow. And I like to tell people he's the last great maitre d' in town, because he'll probably spend a little bit too much time on your table talking to you, but while he's doing that, it's the same thing I hear. I didn't know there was other guests in the room, right? It was just him and I, right? And if we can, it's hard to teach that, and that's what we're trying to get our staff to engage in, and that's the recipe for me. If you can make the guests feel that way, they understand like what we're doing is genuine, right? And we talk. I think maybe it's this video, or it's something I've seen in the past, but it talks about service, right? And checking off the boxes, right? And we know that there's steps of service. The silverware's got to be plated at a certain side of the table. You're going to clear from a certain side of the table. You're going to talk to your guest in a certain manner. And if you can check off all those boxes, 9 times out of 10, you're a great restaurant, right? We looked at it and we're like, okay, well, I don't want you to just check off the boxes, right? I want you to, just because you can do that, can you make them feel hospitable? Can you make them feel engaged in your process, right? So we had actually one server that works with us. We've adapted one of her styles. Her thing was going down and kneeling at the table and talking at an eye level with the guest. And she started doing this. I was like, this is.
I don't remember her name, but I remember that. That stuck in my mind.
Yeah. See, it's these things, right? In my mind, I'm looking at her and I'm like, what is she doing? Right? Why is she down at the table on her knee? You know, like, it doesn't look appropriate to me at first. And then we talked about it. And the psychology behind it is most people don't like being talked down to, right? Or there's a sense of standoffish, right? So by doing that, I think it creates a whole new avenue of engaging into your guest, right? Mm-hmm. We do some interesting things here in the restaurant, you know. I won't bore you with a lot of them, but a lot of it is psychology, you know, and it's, you know, John's really good about teaching, you know, if somebody crosses their arm, they're usually a little defensive. So cross your arms back, right? And mimic the body movement of the person, right? There's all these little tactics of making people feel good, right? And they'll feel less defensive and take the ease off of them. But, you know, I want to make sure that no matter what happens in this room, that every guest, they leave happy, right? And that's it. And we have one job. That's the only job we have here, right? And the food's going to be good 9 times out of 10. It's going to be great, right? I'm not worried about that. The service and the hospitality has got to be the first thing that happens from the time you walk in and the time you leave. And if you can do that, then, you know, I think it's a win. You know?
What are, you know, these last months have been, well, there's a whole bunch of adjectives we can use, but
sure.
I always like to find the silver lining. What are some of the things you've learned or realized or come to the realization that perhaps you hadn't thought of before in this journey we've all been taking since March?
Sure. Well, I think, you know, obviously, you know, adapting every day, right, has been the biggest thing. And like, you know, when you do things certain times, you can coast and you know, a restaurant, I like to tell people it's like a roller coaster, right? You're going to do really good for like 6 months. And I'm talking on the internal side, like staff wise, you know, you're going to do like 6 to 9 months, 12 months, maybe it's a little longer, where you're just going to be crushing it. Everybody's like high-fiving and chest bumping. And then it's going to be like 3-month period of like, maybe you lost somebody, or, you know, somebody's pissed off, or we're just not happy, right? Like we need to retune and adjust, right? Because it's a hard job, right? If you're cooking, and I'm going to kind of sidetrack a little bit from the initial question, but if you're in this industry, you have to love it. Like I tell people all the time, if you don't love cooking, because it is long hours, right? And if you think you're going to succeed in this career and not put in those hours, and that there's a left-hand turn that you're going to take and you're going to be successful, you're wrong. But to answer your question, this whole thing, allowed me to realize that I needed more balance in my life. That I spoke about, you know, one of the biggest things for 3 years, we've talked about work, family, friends is one of our mottos here, right? Making sure that you can hit that triangle in that order. And that doesn't mean work, family. It means work, family, friends, you know, and making sure that we all had enough of that, right? That we were all getting out. I tell these guys, I don't write my chef schedules, right? I'm not going to micromanage them or dictate that they need to be here at 12 o'clock every day or anything like that. I say, you come in when you feel that you need to be here to get the job done. Right? And if that's 2 o'clock, that's 3 o'clock, great. As long as it's done, I'm happy, right? There's no reason. You should be focusing on your health in the morning and doing, if it's whatever you're into. I picked up jiu-jitsu lately, which I couldn't even tell you why, but I love it. It's something that, you know, has helped me. But finding the balance, I think, is one of the things. I was able to spend so much more time with my family. Having dinner at home every night for 3 months, you know, during all this was like, I'd never
What's
even,
that?
that was like, it made up for, 15 years of being able to do it once a week. So, I guess that was a big thing. And I guess in a whole, it was finding finding the reset button on the areas that we may have missed along the way or veered from. Sparrow and Wolf was, like I said, it was built to be a neighborhood restaurant, right? We didn't have a bottle of wine over $100. Our prices in the beginning were very low, actually. We didn't offer tasting menus. We wanted to do really good, delicious food. Now we became 60% tourist along the way, which our guests demanded tasting menus. They demanded bigger wines and, all these things, and great for my bottom line and great for the business as a whole. But I realized during COVID, I needed to reconnect to my community, right? So we allowed that time to look at those things that we weren't doing brunch before. It pulled the Band-Aid and forced me, hey, you've been talking about doing brunch for a year, do it, right? So we added the brunch in. Now we're doing brunch on Sundays. And we're bringing musicians in every week, which is really cool. I don't know if you've seen that.
I have.
We have ambient music in the background but we wanted an opportunity to reconnect with our community, and I think that was the biggest thing. How do we connect with our community during these times? Because those are the most important people. Our tourists aren't coming to town right now. We need to make sure that our guests in our city know that we're here for them as well, and we're going to do everything we can do. So, getting musicians back to work. Right. Every Sunday, for the most part, we have a new musician. And interesting. It's fun. We're seeing some really cool people come in the door. If I could allow it to be this kind of like open forum where people would just show up and play, I would. But it gets a little. There's some things we have to kind of connect the dots and make sure are all correct along the way. But community first and foremost all along the way, resetting. And making sure we're hitting those marks. We've introduced our pantry, which has been a big thing. A lot of people aren't eating out yet. A lot of people are enjoying cooking at home much more than they used to. I learned that over COVID, so many people became great bread makers or stepped out of the uncomfort. Even my wife was cooking all the time, where she didn't cook normally before. So or as much. So now we've given them open to our pantry, which is an online thing on our website at sparrowandwolflv.com, but we've given them the opportunity to have access to our ingredients. So whether it's our fresh cut steaks or fresh oysters or different types of condiments that you normally wouldn't see or in the grocery store have access to, or just certain quality levels, we've opened that up for our guests to be able to come and pick up, not just do to carry out and take our food home, but create awareness of that there's stuff out there that you can have and have fun with in your kitchen. We've got people like one guy, he picks up our chimichurri and he makes eggs with it every day, and he's sending me pictures all the time. It's amazing. I love to see what people are doing with these things. So I think those are the biggest things, right? In connecting on how we come out of this. But at the end of the day, it's looking forward and just you got to kind of put your foot to the ground and keep pushing. It's those that do these types of things, and I'm hoping, again, none of us are getting rich through this whole thing. We're trying to survive. I think we're on the more of the blessed scale, unfortunate side of the pendulum than some other restaurants, and we're much appreciative of that. But at the end of the day, it's like constantly creating content every other week or every week to make sure that we have the engagement of the people of our community, and that we're hitting all the marks for them. I think that's a big one. When the burger kits have been, I don't know if you've seen the burger kits we're doing, but in 3 years, I wouldn't have put a burger on my menu, even though I tell you it was supposed to be a neighborhood restaurant in the beginning. my ego may have gotten in the way along the way, and I would secretly do a burger at the bar for like a week, but it had like truffles and burrata and all types of fancy stuff on it. And then when we opened back up, I said, we gotta have a burger. People want a burger. Now it's one of the most requested things. So we do burger kits now, where you can pick up our fresh dry aged ground meat and kits, and you take it home and cook it yourself. And people are loving it.
Chef, an hour has passed, and an hour that went by so
Oh wow,
quickly.
didn't even seem. Yeah.
And thank you so much for such an insight and great conversation about your world and how it relates to our incredible community in Las Vegas, and the connections you continue to make every day. I'm a fan, and I know so many others are as well. Thank you for being on MusicWise.
Well, thank you very much. We're grateful. We're grateful for your time and all of our guests that come through the door every day, man. I appreciate you.
I'll be there. I promise to be there very soon, next week, as a matter of fact.
I look forward to it. And if you have musicians that are bored on a Sunday and want to come hang out with us, let me know.
All right, I will. Thanks,
all right,
Brian.
man. Good to see you. Thank you.
You too. Bye.